And we are live. Welcome to this ElaadNL Webtalk number 43. We do this one in English. My name is Erik van Kaathoven. I'm a communications manager at Elaad. And Elaad is the Knowledge and Innovation Center for the smart and sustainable charging of electric vehicles. And we are an initiative of the Joint Dutch Grid Operators. Today's our speakers are Patrick Rademakers, welcome, and Edwin Witvoet. And also welcome. Their presentation is about scalability in e-mobility and how to move beyond the limitations of early architecture in the e-mobility ecosystem. The presentation will be about 20 minutes, and after that we will have a question and answers part with Patrick and Edwin. You can put your questions in the questions box, which is part of this web tool. And this web talk will also be recorded and will be available later on YouTube. So without further ado, let's start. Patrick, Edwin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Erik. Edwin, can you move one slide further? So this is what we're going to talk about. Very short bit about me. I've been in e-mobility in the past 14 years. I helped write the OCPP spec. I helped set up the open charge lines, and I helped or advised many of the big market players today. That's all I'm going to say about me, because it's not about me. It's something about the things that I've learned over the past 14 years. I'll start with a quick summary of the most common way of looking at EV charging architecture at the moment. I call that architecture 1.0. I always sometimes call that the pilot architecture. And then I'll move on to what I think would be a much better approach, the architecture 2.0. And then Edwin will take over. I'm doing the theoretical part, and Edwin from Jibe has actually implemented this, and he can speak from experience. Next slide. So this is a picture that will be familiar for most of you. On the left, you have the chargers. They are connected to a charge point management system via a telecom connection or another connection. If they are using a telecom connection, then they have SIM cards, and the back office URL is configured. And on the right, you see the ecosystem, so connections to MSPs, navigation systems, DSOs, a lot of external systems. And all of that, the entire ecosystem that wants something with those chargers, has to go through that charge point management system. So everything has to be in, and in practice, a lot of successful charge point management systems therefore become very big monolithic systems. Next slide. So the title for this slide is the point that many hundreds of years ago people thought the world as flat. There was an assumption, but it was considered a fact, and that's what I want to challenge today as well. So 3 points: chargers can only connect to one system. That is still correct. That one system has to be a charge point management system. That's the assumption that we're all making, and that's not correct, and I'll talk about that in the next slides. Then as a consequence of that, one system has to be CPMS, therefore all features, pilots, customer specifics, and whatnot have to be inside that one CPMS. So if you understand that the previous one is incorrect, then this one also becomes very incorrect, and it's indeed much better to do it differently. Next. So this is where we come from, and then Edwin, to the next one. This is where I want to take you. So instead of the CPMS, I introduced the concept of an OCPP proxy. So the chargers are still connected with the SIM card and URL but no longer to the CPMS, to the proxy. So that part becomes a constant, irrespective of which charge point management system is beyond the proxy. And this allows you to basically split up a charge point management system into separate independent systems, one for operational management or customer specifics, one potentially for whatever OCPP messages needs to be translated into something for OCPI, for roaming, can also be other protocols as well. And you can imagine that you can also plug in, if you separate it out like this, plug in separate specialized services like smart charging or independent data validation. So basically what the proxy does is receive OCPP messages and just relay those to other systems. And because the proxy is in the middle, you can actually connect multiple systems at the same time. One of the applications could also be for charge point manufacturers. If you are a very successful charge point manufacturer, then your chargers are in a lot of networks, like let's say 20 or 30 different networks. And if you also offer third line support, that means that your service engineers need to know how to log in and find a way through all those systems. Whereas if you do this, the charge point manager can hook up their own tool of choice, a single tool of choice, just for their own chargers that are running in your network. And they can do much better service for a lower price, probably. You also see on the right that the ecosystem part is still there, but then the ecosystem connectivity can also be broken up into the relevant pieces for those subsystems. Next. So if you have multiple networks, there are now more and more companies out there that go internationally, possibly by buying other networks, and then you end up with different groups of chargers that are connected via different telecom deals to different charge point management systems. And if you are in one of those companies, you'll understand the pain of having multiple networks and no way to migrate easily to one system, no way to do in an easy way cross-network services. If you have an OCPP proxy in between, then you can still route all those chargers to the original systems. So your existing services to your customers can be kept, but at the same time, because you have the OCPP proxy in place, you can do centralized roaming contracts and billing, centralized reporting and analysis, smart charging, or independent data validation, and of course, again, the charger OEM support across the different networks. Next. So this is another way of looking at it. Again, multiple networks, but instead of doing a regional division, you could also have different charge point management systems for different very specific purposes, one for fleet or lease, one where you are involved in public tendering, and one for home charging. So I am a bit on the time pressure. I can talk hours about this, so I hope the concept is a bit clear, but based on what I've seen, the growth of successful startups, at some point they all run into very similar scaling issues, and that means that you either get stuck, try to keep architecture 1.0 scalable, which rarely works well, or you can accept that you need to do it slightly differently, and those who switch to this concept or something very similar, companies sometimes also develop something internally that looks like this. They are the ones that actually make it to scale. If later on there are questions, so I can do a separate presentation on how you would migrate from 1.0 to 2.0. That's a story in itself. but just for time's sake, know that it doesn't have to be a big bang. You can just migrate as part of your normal maintenance cycle. And once you are on those on a proxy system, migrating from one system to the next is as easy as the click of a button, instead of having to send people out there with a SIM card and a URL and a laptop to reconfigure the charger. So that's my my part. Then I give the floor to Edwin.
Thank you, Patrick, for this introduction and your learnings in this still rather young space of e-mobility. Yeah, Patrick and myself, we know each other for a long time already, even before Patrick entered the e-mobility space. And we kept in touch ever since. Yeah, so my name is Edwin Witvoet. I'm the owner of Jibe company. Jibe is a software company. We build software platforms. We run them as a service. We like to be in the scale-up phase of the platforms that are used by our customers, and enable our customers to innovate and scale up at the same time. So in this picture, you see a couple of our solutions, Expand and Loyalty Point. These are e-commerce and loyalty solutions we have been running for many years now. Expand is also running in retail context, like Albert Heijn and Ethos. So we facilitate many transactions in all stores and online of digital products like tickets and telephone credits and gift cards and that kind of stuff. So Jibe is a 50 people company with 3 locations in Holland, in Romania, and in Bulgaria. And since 2018, I think we had our first implementation of what Patrick refers to as a proxy, and we refer to as a gateway, since it has a bit more controls. And we labeled this, or we named it, the ChargeBroker. So today I'd like to share a bit of our experience introducing and building the ChargeBroker and enabling this architecture 2.0 concept that Patrick has just talked about. Okay, so when we started, we typically faced customers in the situation like this, a bit simplified. So customers have built themselves or acquired networks, but somehow they entered into a situation with multiple networks in parallel. So different type of chargers, different type of CPOs or charge point management systems with their own typical services like smart charging and payment/roaming. So yeah, here you are, 2 independent networks, and you need to control them with different systems. So if we put this in an architecture 2.0 perspective, you see the gateway actually connecting to the networks, to the charging networks, to the chargers, and offering access to these chargers to different services, where the CPO platform is also seen as a service. And so here, the same services are still active. Charge point operator A running, let's say, its own network. Charge point operator B still running its own network. But in this case, we made a selection of the payment service A, because that fits a bit better, and smart charging system B. So actually, we unified the setup. We gave access to the services that we like, and so you can pick and choose the service that you like and want to scale up further in your network. It's even possible to migrate the chargers in a gradual way to the CPO of choice to further decomplify, what is it? To make it more simple in terms of network complexity. So this picture shows how to migrate from separate networks and duplication of services towards a unified network and having, let's say, the option to integrate services that you like over time. Because the best decision today is always different from what is ahead of you in a year's time. Okay, so looking a bit in the architecture of 2.0 and especially the gateway. So we have now built generation 3. So we are at the 3rd version. And I think we have now the concepts in place to accommodate the architecture 2.0 concepts. So how does that look, or what are the key concepts of the gateway itself? So the first one, of course, is the enablement of the multi-service approach. And so the horizontal approach of having concurrent services sitting next to each other, all having access or partial access to a set of chargers. Well, this also introduces something that we need to think about, and that is who has control over what, who has priority over what, and how do we go about data sharing and that kind of stuff. So we need some kind of business logic to control this grouping, accessing, routing, prioritization of services. So that's also a dedicated and a separate concept we introduced. And as a third one, to deal with all kind of hardware versions and some of the OCPP versions being introduced over time. And I have to say a bit of hardware dialects here and there. We also added the concept of transformations. And the concept of transformations actually helps to interact with the chargers, deal with the dialects or different versions, different security levels, all kind of details, but very important details to deal with the variety of vendors and hardware, and to also be able to mix and match that in this concept. The focus is with these concepts to actually validate a lot of service providers and actors in this whole ecosystem, so that we actually have a kind of certified list of partners and services that allows our customers to pick and choose from. So these are a bit of the concepts we have in place and the focus we have teaming up with companies integrating or adding services to charging networks. And that is actually what I would like to discuss a bit more. So where are we? Here you see, again, in the horizontal layer at the top, a lot of services or integrations of networks in other contexts. And at the bottom, you see groups of chargers in different contexts, so home, public, or business. So the first one I would like to highlight is the possibility to have multiple CPO platforms to coexist in this network, because in different contexts you might want to team up with a different CPO for many reasons. So it gives you the option to select the CPO of choice, and over time actually reselect if needed to change your selection. And through the gateway, there's no need to reconfigure the chargers anymore. It's just selecting and routing a group of chargers to another CPO, or another version of the CPO's platform could also be. So the first one is the CPO selection and coexistence of many at the same time. The second one I already talked about a bit is the transformations to also support legacy chargers to extend the lifetime, but also incorporate legacy chargers in the uniform or scaled up network that you want to control with all your tools and systems you have in place. Third is, that's also what Patrick already highlighted. I think he called it OEM systems. But the nice thing is that completely besides and in parallel to the CPO platforms, we can allow dedicated platforms for installers and companies that do maintenance and support on different types of hardware. We can offer them to use their own application instead of having to use the CPO charge point management platform to do their services in terms of installation, managing, and support. So next to the, let's say, the repartitioning of the charge point management activities, I'd like to talk a bit on the integration of EV charging solutions into existing ecosystems. So looking at the parking space, and so there are lots of parking management and parking operators out there, which offer parking management solutions. And of course, they will want to offer a integrated user experience to their guests and users. So that, to be concrete, that you can use an app of this parking management provider, and that you use the app for selecting and even reserving a parking spot. In this case, with a charger, you plug in and you start the charging session from your parking app, and you also pay for your parking and your charging in one go. And even get loyalty points and that kind of stuff, which is already there in this parking platform. So this is an example how to integrate EV charging networks seamlessly in existing solutions. Another one that might resonate is looking at fuel stations. So the fuel station areas, they already all have their fuel pumps. And now you see a lot of fuel stations also deploying charging stations. But actually the user experience is quite different. And so you go there, but you never come in the shop. You are not able to pay in the shop and access your shop loyalty points. So, but with this concept, we can, with the multiple services that can interact with this charger, we can support still the use of this RFID starting and stopping. But you can also go into the shop, ask for starting the charging session, pay with your traditional payment methods, and also swiping your loyalty card as you would do with your fuel transactions. So this enables fuel station operators, to also support known user experiences and integration of payment and loyalty. What we did not talk about a lot yet is data. Data is quite important, as you know, but since the gateway has an let's say a super view and a generic overview of all the services and what is going on in terms of communication to the chargers, the gateway also keeps track of everything that is going on in terms of communication. It captures all the communication, and it is able to share that in real time, but also put logic on top in terms of alerts, notifications, maybe some transformations again of data, missing data, that kind of stuff. Well, with these examples, we I hope we showed that making this a more horizontal and concurrent approach, we enable the whole ecosystems and companies in there to team up in a concurrent way, have an independence in terms of product roadmap, but also offer a controlled way of mixing and matching and configuring the needs of the operator. So, with this, we hope to offer the architectural 2.0 based approach for a managed scale up in the near future of EV charging networks.
Yep.
So this ends also my part of the presentation, and I'd like to give the word back to Erik.
Yeah, if I may. So I forgot one thing in my part, but that really came to light in your last slide. There's no CPMS out there that is absolutely the best at everything. And here this shows that you can pick the best services for you as you see fit.
Exactly.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Patrick, for your presentation. Very interesting subject. So let's start with the question and answer part. Edwin, if you would like to, you can stop sharing your screen so people can see us a little bit better. Yeah, we're back. So Patrick, you already told us a little bit about this, but how did you get involved in this subject matter?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I said, I've been involved with the OCPP developments basically from the get-go, and not only writing the spec but also helping companies make their implementations. And because I got to look into the kitchen of a lot of companies, I saw the same issues evolving. But back then it was still very much, oh, we need a few chargers, and let's not worry too much about everything else. That worrying about everything else I was already doing. So I think the first idea for this was back in 2012, 2013. I've been developing it ever since, and yeah, with Jibe, I found a company that was willing to take risks on the idea and actually start implementing it.
Yeah. So Edwin, this was your software company. So this is your first introduction to the EV charging ecosystem.
Yeah. So as I said, I know Patrick already for as long as he works in the e-mobility, and he always started raising this concern of scalability, and that something needs to change. And I think in 2017 we came up with the first implementation, and started testing that in the market in 2018. So compared to Patrick, we are rather new, but in the last few years we got our hands dirty in this EV charging landscape.
Yeah, and is the EV charging really different from other areas that you're working in, or is it much the same?
That's a good question. So when I introduced our company, there's a couple of commonalities, and that is, let's say, scaling up of software solutions that needs to be highly reliable and secure and managed. And those capabilities we learned in other product market combinations. And of course, the EV charging specific knowledge is rather new to us, but as a tech company, very interesting, and yeah, we are diving into the details also.
Yeah, so Edwin, also, are there any other areas or businesses that we can learn from in the world of EV charging with regard to this architecture?
Yeah. So our let's say personal or our learnings ourselves was more in the software as a service domain in general, and also the concept of scalability and partitioning partitioning of the system in different responsibilities and services, I think is an important starting point that also resonates with us in Patrick's story about 2.0, because it is about partitioning, concurrency, and having, let's say, control over such a concept. So I think, yeah, services-based or a services-oriented architecture, I think that is in our line of industry or in the software business well known, and I think applies very well in this architectural approach.
Okay, and Patrick, what do you see as the main challenges for your idea of architecture 2.0? What are the main? Are they mostly technical or organizational, financial?
Also an interesting question. So I think the most important one is, like with the example I gave it, the world is flat. It takes people, in my experience, it takes people a while to get used to the new idea. So that's the most challenging part, getting the message across in words that people that resonate with people. Once you've accepted the fact that there is another way and it's actually better, there's not really that much of a technical challenge. You can, as I said, you need to migrate at some point, but that can be done in a controlled way, and it also allows you to approach your own charge point management system in a different way, splitting it up in separate services. So it actually might make, in the long run, might make your implementations cheaper. And it also enables for whether you're a charge point operator or a charge point manufacturer or an installation partner, it enables you to offer new types of services. So in that sense, there are also not so much additional challenges, but more new opportunities. So yeah, the big challenge is getting people to really understand the importance of this. And yeah, in my experience, companies that have been active in this field for many years, especially also the bigger ones that have multiple networks in different countries, they really experience all the pain that I try to address. So they really get it. And yeah, for smaller companies that are still in the let's first get a few chargers out there and let's see, for them it's still a bit beyond their vision. But yeah, the sooner you adopt this, the less pain you'll have.
Yeah, and Patrick, if you have seen the live, I guess put in your words, then and you want to migrate from 1.0 to 2.0, is this hard or is this easy?
So as I said, so you can migrate on the back of a maintenance cycle. Chargers sometimes need maintenance if you have to send somebody out there, or sometimes you can even change the back office URL remotely. So yeah, the first step is bringing the ChargeBroker into your network so that it is reachable. Validating that from ChargeBroker you can reach your back office URL, and then it's just a matter of bit by bit bringing on the chargers to ChargeBroker or ChargeBroker, whatever proxy implementation you choose.
Yes.
And then forwarding those calls to the actual CPMS. While you're in this hybrid situation where not all chargers have migrated yet, you can still perform everything with both sets of chargers as normal, but for the chargers that already run through the proxy or ChargeBroker, you can also allow additional services, services that are not present in your CPMS of choice.
Yeah, thank you. So we got a question from Bart Vick. He asks you whether there are any implementations already in the field? I guess this one is for Edwin. And what are the lessons learned from those implementations?
Yeah, very good one. So we had the first, I think, production level implementations in 2019. So answer is yes, they are in the field.
So this was in the Netherlands or somewhere else, or?
So here in Holland, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the lessons learned is, I think, also ourselves to understand beyond the concept what it really meant to have the charges and the polling times and that kind of stuff configured well for end-to-end flawless operations. While doing so, we also monitored through our data and analysis. We actually observed a couple of things that were not shown in existing systems. So we learned both ways from our side how to configure the ChargeBroker in an existing network. And while doing so, we revealed some quirks that happen to be out there in terms of data consumption in this case. That was never revealed. So while co-exercising the first implementations, I think we had a fun time, or everybody involved had a fun time and a good time to learn about the details going on in the network. Yeah, and since then, I think the enthusiasm grows in terms of benefits that people see in the 2.0 approach.
Mm-hmm. And another question, which is kind of in the line of this one, is by Supit Pramanik. He asked, this is the other one. First, the one from Manu Melot. Could you give an idea of the implementation time and efforts? Perhaps, Edwin, you can tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so from a gateway perspective, we can onboard customers and we can create an environment for new customers. Yeah, right now, I would say it's a software configuration. So I think the lead time is, as Patrick also mentioned, on the back of a maintenance cycle, you need to connect the chargers to the ChargeBroker where they currently are connected to the charge point management systems. And and that process we need to exercise together, and it's typically depending on how fluent that can go. As Patrick mentioned, some chargers allow for remote reconfiguration of the URLs that they are pointing to. Then it's quite quick and easy.
Yeah, so if I may add to that, so if you select a new charger for your network, typically every CPO does an acceptance test of that new charger. And what you see is that companies that try this out, try it out for a ChargeBroker, want to do the acceptance test over again to see if everything still works. So that's also often part of the process and part of the time it takes to move. But the move itself is, as Edwin said, fairly quickly.
Plus that we try to keep track of and to validate ourselves against a lot of chargers and against a lot of service providers on top in order to speed up this whole exercise. Yeah,
thank you. So now to the question of Sudip Pramanik. Is this Steve, S-T-E-V-E, and I don't know this pronunciation, based platform or based on the proprietary framework? Is it open or closed? In my words.
Yeah. So we have been using Steve. If you mean the charge point management system open source version, we have been using it as a charge point management system to test our end-to-end solution with. Because the ChargeBroker does not replace a charge point management system, so we needed to use one. So we know the implementation, but it's separate indeed. So the ChargeBroker is a dedicated implementation. Also has a lot of requirements in terms of speed and minimizing the addition in transaction time. So that's why Steve was for us not a starting point, but we did it differently. And it was a reason for us having a third generation implementation by now because of that.
Right. Thank you. So a question from Louis Sokol. In case of problems experienced by end consumers, customers, how do you facilitate troubleshooting between the actors, and how do you avoid a blame game between all the companies involved in the chain?
Yeah, this this is a very good question, and that is also a bit. We are in a process of shaping that a bit, because with the different actors, there's a bit of different views on how to go about this. So the current situation is that we respect and leave the chain and the processes in place, and then we come in as a second or third party, how do you say, incident management chain. And so far we did not end up in a blame game, because we see that all actors have the same interest, and that is getting the network running in case of problems. So we do have quite some data and insights. So we are fairly quick with actors to agree on what the point of issue is to be solved.
Yeah. If I may add to that, so problem analysis from a charge point management system for a lot of those systems, it's still relatively high level. What you see, OCPP messages, but not all the technical details. By having a charge broker in between, you can also see the much lower level technical details. So where the first customer, the Jibe, I watched in the background as the domain expert, and you saw that the problems they were facing were actually much quicker resolved than just using the CPMS.
Okay, thank you. So a question from Arjan Wargers, which is a colleague of mine at Elaad. This one is for Patrick, I guess. The need for data is increasing. In general, we see an increasing need for data web instead of a data chain. So what's your opinion on this with regard to this subject, Patrick?
Yes, interesting question. So the data chain, that is chargers, CPMS, and then externals via OCPI or whatnot, which means that in every step along the way, something might be filtered out, left out, whatnot. So at the end of the chain, you can have questions about the quality of the data. ChargeBroker indeed is much more a web concept, where you see all the original data passing by, and if you hook in on that level, a data lake or whatnot, you can see all the details, and all the details for every network in the same way. So if you have multiple CPOs on the same charge broker, in the traditional way, it's depending on what they offer you in forms of data, but here you can basically also watch what is happening live, and this could be also perhaps a domain again for a dedicated service, analyzing uptime, utilization rate, etc., and then doing that live instead of waiting for a monthly, quarterly, or half-year report from the CPO. So if you can watch that live, you can say, well, this place has been very busy now for a few weeks. Perhaps we should set things in motion to add a few charges there, instead of being typically half a year late and then starting the process.
Okay, thank you.
And so in addition to that, you can also plug in on that level independent data validation. So if, for instance, a DSO is paying for flexibility, then you can monitor if actual charging schedules or adjusted charging schedules are actually being sent, And you can do that, but the DSO could do that. You could allow an independent data validator to hook up and see that. And again, that can be done live. So if you pay for flexibility now and you see nothing happening, then you can at that moment already take secondary actions to get more flexibility instead of just buying flexibility and hoping for the best.
Yeah, thank you. In line with this, also from Rademakers, this one I guess is for Edwin. At ELA, we are working on grid-aware charging, among other things, a form of smart charging in which is based on the availability of the grid capacity. The CPO is then asked to adjust the available charging capacity to the grid capacity during a number of hours a day. Validation of this needs to be set up. So how can your solutions play a role in this? I guess Patrick already told us a lot about this, but perhaps you can add add to it.
Yeah. So maybe to add to that, next to the monitoring of whether the charging schedules are sent, another one is whether the chargers do accept and take it over without errors. And so we also can do active monitoring on possible errors that occur when sending these schedules and not being taken over or respected. So being accepted but still not accepted. So there's a lot we could add in this setup.
Yeah, one of our last questions, as I look at the clock also, we have still time for a few. This one is from Paul Broos. He has a question about transformations. Edwin mentioned if some charging points run on OCPP 1.5 and others on 1.6, which level of cybersecurity will be effective after the transformation? Yeah, he would like an upgrade, of course, rather than a downgrading.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to answer this, Edwin, or me. It consists actually of 2 points. You can translate OCPP 1.5 SOAP into 1.6 JSON with some nodes, but that part we solved. So a legacy 1.5 charger that will not get an update anymore can still be managed by a 1.6 JSON or future higher system only. And since the chain consists of 2 parts, the charger to ChargeBroker and ChargeBroker to your CPMS, you have 2 parts where you can have the security and different levels of security. So I personally would always recommend the strongest security between ChargeBroker and the CPMS, just because you want to have a secure CPMS as secure as possible. As said, the chargers won't be getting updates, some of them. So there you are limited to their maximum security possibility that they have on board. Then you still, of course, have the APN security and that kind of stuff. But that is what you have to deal with, and either you upgrade security halfway or you don't. If you connect the chargers directly, but then you expose much more of your CPMS.
Okay, Edwin, would you like to add to that important subject, of course, cybersecurity? Nothing to add to that.
So the transformation is on both the protocol as well as on security. So you can or down the chain you can play with that or configure that. So that's, I think, an additional advantage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So one final question for you both. If you look ahead 5 or 10 years from now, with regard to this also, what will the world of EV charging look like? With Patrick, then Edwin, and then we'll round up.
Okay. So I think it's important to keep realizing that different countries, different regions are in a different maturing phase. So I think there's a startup phase, a scale-up phase, and a maturity phase. And I think in 5 to 10 years, the Netherlands and UK, Norway, California will go towards that maturity phase. And what I see is that this will be a normal solution in that those markets. Doesn't negate the fact that countries that are still in a startup phase often still are focused on just getting those chargers out there and building up experience. Mm-hmm. In some cases, they are at the moment at least not even concerned about getting paid for the electricity because they just want to know what it is. They don't have the cars, etc. So as those markets go from startup to scale up, they will run into the very same problems that we already have and are trying to solve now. So my advice for those markets would be, observe and take note of the lessons learned here and start as early as possible, because then you won't have expensive migration projects. You can avoid lock-ins to CPMSs that look like a good choice, cheap choice at the time if you only want chargers, but as your needs grow, that doesn't automatically mean that your initial choice of CPMS will grow with you.
Yeah, so thank you. So Edwin, what's your idea of the world of EV charging in a few years?
So I think for the coming years, we have a lot of focus on getting the amount of charge points installed to meet the demands of the users. But beyond that, I think it's a play of blending user experience. And so it's now currently, it's a really dedicated user experience to start and stop and keep track of your transactions. I think it will embed in all mobile phones, applications, and customer journeys. Going to the supermarket, you want to maybe reserve a charger or have priority if you have if you are a member or a paid member of a supermarket. You get your loyalty points, you get your discount vouchers. So I think blended user experiences are very important to focus on, and that's something we would like to do so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much again, Patrick and Edwin, for your presentation, and thanks attendees for watching us and sending in questions. Our next web talk will be in 2 weeks' time on the 8th of December, and will be done by Gerwin Hoogstein from the Technical University of Twente. And he will talk about the opportunities and challenges using efficient energy management with charging hundreds of electric cars in one area. And his web talk will be in Dutch. This one will be available soon on YouTube. Thanks again, everyone, and hope to see you on December 8th, same place, same time. Bye.
Bye.